Afternoon. It is actually, yeah. Yeah. More PS1 Collection, PS1 games. A nice little short episode this time. So we're on the O's. There's only four O's. That rhymes. It's only four O's. And yeah, so hopefully it shouldn't take too long. So I'm not really had a bit of a break since sort of Christmas. I'm a bit slightly out of the swing of things. So I don't know. I feel slightly spaced out, but it's always this time of year. I never quite know what day of the week it is. You know, I generally sort of Christmas, New Year, a few days after. Just don't know whether I'm coming or going. But anyway, right. Four PS1 games, not too many. So hopefully it shouldn't take too long. But that's I've said that before, and it's failed. I failed miserably. But just move my microphone. Yeah. Right. Four games. Two I could probably bring out together. Other than that, yeah, let's crack on. Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, and take a wild guess what the other one is. Just nice to bloody crack. Oddworld's Abe's Exodus. That crack. That. Yeah, for a long time, I had only had the demo of this. I think there's sort of a one-off. There's a demo that you can get that it probably came in one of the PS1 official PlayStation magazines, but it's literally just this one demo of Abe's Oddworld. Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. Yeah. So that's for a long time. That's all I had of the game, and I've not had this one that long. I mean, a few years, but like I said, for a long time. It's quite dark. Just want to reflect some light. There you go. For a long time, I only had that game there. One of my first memories of it is because I had the demo when I was at university and I think I went from when I was at university. I went to before Christmas. Went to my aunt and uncle's house for Christmas, and my cousin was there. And I had my PlayStation in the boot, so he wanted to have a go because he was only young at the time. He was just, I don't know, probably about 4 or 5, something like that. And I cracked open the demo of this, and he just basically spent the whole time farting, not himself, but in the game, because basically you can make the main character fart. So that was hilarious for a sort of a young kid, but. No, it's what is it? It's a sort of side-scrolling puzzle game in the sort of vein of Flashback, Prince of Persia, that sort of game. It's one of the sort of classic trial and error games. But yeah, it's a pretty well-made game. In all honesty, it looks beautiful. Basically, you play this character who's Abe, obviously Abe, and he's a race called the Muckodon. Think, yeah, and you're in sort of a meat processing plant in some sort of weird alien world, and it's run by these. What are they called? I can't remember what the actual alien race is, but you're in this meat processing plant, and you realise that you and your fellow Muckodons are going to be sort of processed for chomping, to be eaten. But I think there's these enemies called sligs. I think all these different sorts of enemies. But basically, it's one of these sort of trial and error sorts of games, like Flashback, and it involves basically going through the game, working out how to sort of the best way to do it, the process, and then also. It involves sort of reflex, sort of quite quick reactions, because once you know the process and how quickly you have to do it, and you have to sort of repeat the process to basically get through the game. It's all trial and error essentially, but Looks stunning. Really nicely animated, sort of beautifully drawn backgrounds. Yeah, the one downside of this is they're bloody tough. Like its sequel, actually, they're bloody tough. But especially this one, frustrating because the save system's really irritating because you can't sort of save. You die a lot, and you can't save. There aren't that many save points, and when you do die, you go back right to the beginning of a section. So basically, the nature of the game, you're going to die a lot, which means going back to the beginning of a section, having to repeat it. So it gets a bit frustrating. Whereas this one, very sort of supposedly call it a very similar game. This addresses that because you can save any time you like, which makes it the game itself is probably actually slightly more difficult. The puzzles is probably slightly more sophisticated and a bit more complicated, but unlike Abe's Odyssey, you save wherever you like. So, which I suppose in a way you can sort of pick your way through the game. Even though they're both massive games, it's just this one feels slightly less frustrating purely because of the save system. It's slightly different. It's like this. I think this one you've got these different sorts of abilities. You can sort of hypnotise sort of stupid characters and other things like that. And you can, it's all sort of distraction and a bit sort of stealthy in a way. And obviously you've got the same abilities in these with a whole load more enemies. And that one's the original where you've got like these sligs, they're like these things with machine guns, and they've got their own dogs, and they've got these, other things. And these ones have got like flying versions and stuff like that. Now this one, I forgot what's the plot. I can't remember, but it looks just as good as the first one. The plot is I think you're in a factory. I think you're slaves. I can't remember. It's been a while since I played them. But I mean, the preference is obviously for this one purely because it won't do your head in as much. I mean, it's difficult and they're massive games. It's just the save system is a massive help. I think in this one, your fellow Mucadons are blind for some reason. So it's just you have to use your sort of vocal powers because you have sort of certain sort of basic vocal commands, and you have to lead them to safety, which it's pretty much happens in both games. But yeah, that's Abe's Oddworld and Oddworld, Abe's Exodus, and Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. Yeah, I always forget which one's which, but yeah, they're excellent games, really good games. A preference for the sequel purely because of the save system. It makes for a sort of slightly more pleasant gameplay experience because it's not so much of a ball ache having to repeat sections over and over and over again. Right, only two more. So this one, really underrated, Omega Boost. I suppose compare it to, it's basically a third-person mech shooter. Compare it to Zone of the Enders, I suppose, could you? Yeah, Zone of the Enders. Just like a sort of an early generation Zone of the Enders. Really good fun. Looks great. Just surprisingly playable. I always sort of worry about mech shooters that they're going to be really clunky and sort of complicated. But no, this is really simple. You have sort of like a main sort of gun weapon there that you can fire at enemies, but then you have a lock-on system. You can how do you engage a lock-on system? I can't remember. I think it's basically just sort of like you lock on and you release it, and you can fire lots of projectiles at the enemies at one time, and you can spin around as well. There's a sort of because enemies will sort of dive at you, and you can sort of spin around and sort of follow them. I think that is a mechanic here. I'm not making it up. I don't think I am. No, definitely no. But anyway, really, really underrated. Not too expensive. It's one of those games that sort of maybe has a sort of slight reputation for being expensive, but isn't actually that expensive. But then again, its reputation probably means it probably goes for slightly more than it. Sometimes it goes for slightly more than other times. So if you bide your time, you should get this for pretty cheap. But it just looks really good. It's really good fun, really playable. I suppose it's not like an on the rail shooter. I mean, because you can go in any direction. It's not like something like Panzer Dragoon, because you're not always going along the same, or sort of like an earlier version or later version of something like Space Harrier. It's not like that, because you can change direction. That's what I was talking about. You can follow the enemies as they go past you. Relatively easy. I think it's probably one of the sort of like downsides. It feels slightly easy. I remember the first time I had a go at this, getting quite far through the game, which is not necessarily a good sign if you're making proper headway on your first ever go. Even though the actual experience is really enjoyable, it's slightly repetitive, but other than that, I would really highly recommend this. I mean, yeah, I suppose you can imagine Space Harrier, Zone of the Enders, not quite an on-the-rail shooter like Panzer Dragoon, but has a sort of similar sort of feel to it along those lines. Looks, yeah, like I said, looks really nice. There's one particular level where it's almost like in this environment, it's like a sort of setting sunset, and it looks stunning. But right, only last one, Overblood. This is a weird one. 3D sci-fi adventure. That's pretty much what it is. It's you awake on this. I think actually, if I'm honest, I think I can remember having this when I first had my PS1. But then again, I often confuse actually having games with renting them. I've always thought I owned this, but then again, I think I was wrong actually in that assumption. I think I actually rented it twice, so I must have enjoyed it if I rented it twice. Basically, you're his character here called Raz. He's Raz, isn't he? Yeah, he's Raz. What doesn't actually know about? No, he's definitely Raz. You awake on this sort of space station, and it's cold. You don't know what you wake. You sort of cryogenic sleep, and you basically have to work out what's going on because you've got amnesia and you don't know why you're there and stuff like that. And you're freezing cold, and your first task is to find a gilet or whatever it is, a gillet, a puffer jacket. In other words, get yourself a puffer jacket, and then you have to turn on the heating. But it's in the nature of the game. I suppose it's comparable to something like Resident Evil, but it's a sort of sci-fi. But it doesn't actually have weird zombies in it. It doesn't actually have weird zombies. But it's not. There's no pre-rendered backgrounds. It's all. There are sort of camera angles, but they're sort of slightly. They move with you, and they change, and they're slightly. They're not still. In other words. It's sort of 3D. Yeah, exactly what it says. 3D sci-fi adventure. Basically, they have this main character, and you meet a woman and a little robot called Peepo. I think he's Peepo, isn't he? And you can interchange between the characters, and to help you solve the puzzles. It's pretty broken, if I'm honest. It's I'd probably only recommend it to people who are nostalgic for it. I mean, I've got it because I was nostalgic for when I first had it, but watching it back and playing it again, it's pretty awkward and shoddily made. I mean, it's there's combat in it, but the combat's pretty duff, pretty half-assed, and just doesn't work. Just slow and awkward, and the collision detection's not there and stuff like that. Trying to get the game to work as you would like it to work is pretty awkward. Sometimes sort of selecting icons doesn't immediately work straight away, so things like that. But I can't help but like it because it's a bit shoddy, and I like it for that. But it tries hard. I'll recommend I recommend an LP, a Let's Play of this by a guy called Kikoskia. I think I probably only really watched it all the way through because I can remember the game and I had a certain nostalgia for it. So I sat and watched the LP all the way through. But it was really funny, really funny. He's basically a piss take of the game. He had a sort of certain, a respect for the game, a certain love for the game, but at the same time, he's really ripping the piss out of it because of how sort of broken it is. and how awkward. There's actually a sequel, Overblood 2, which I think looks slightly different, but I think it's just as crappy. But not necessarily one I'd recommend. If by all means, if you see it for a 50p or a quid, have a crack. But otherwise, it's not a big old, comparing it to something like Resident Evil is slightly misleading. I mean, it's nowhere near quality wise, but otherwise, it's probably. See it for 50p and have a crack, and you might be able to. You have to work around all the sort of the awkward mechanics and the poorly made games. But I mean, the running animation's hilarious. It just looks like he's shat his pants. But there you go. Overblood, Omega Boost, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, and Oddworld, Abe's Exodus. So those are the O's. Wow, 16 minutes for games. That's quite long, isn't it? But just getting into swing of things, I had, I'd sort of built up a certain rhythm of doing sort of a video every 3 or 4 days or something like that. And I don't know, this sort of time off over Christmas, I've felt up slightly, getting back into it. But anyway, thanks for watching, and there will be more PS1 Collection videos soon. Peas, there's more Peas. Surprisingly, actually, I don't know why surprisingly, but there's more Peas. And then from the P's onwards, it's really when it really kicks in. The R's and the S's and the T's. Actually, no, not so much T's. R's and the S's particularly are just pretty, good selection. But anyway, I'll let you go, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Look out for P's. Yeah, see you later.